In this episode, I try and formulate a plan to find out how oil is getting into the cylinders. A phone call makes me completely change those plans. I break stuff. I'm almost forced to use Anton's courtesy vehicle. I get confused. That's weird. And I break more stuff. Hope you enjoy it. Hello everybody, welcome to number 27, and this is one that we have all, or you have all been waiting for. The InfluEnzo, this recalcitrant horse, the car that refuses to be fixed, is back. Like a 30-second summary is that I bought this car just before the last lockdown. It was supposed to be an easy little tinkerer, keeper-upper, keep it for a year, experience my first and only Ferrari, and then sell it on because it was too much money for me to sort of keep invested in a car. But ultimately, I have changed a lot of parts and a lot of things, and it culminated with both the heads of the engine. One of them was cracked. When I replaced that, obviously I thought, well, there's no point putting a reconditioned head on, but leaving the other old head on. So both of them were reconditioned. The car was put back together, and then very briefly, it actually ran very well. I wouldn't say that these are Ferrari's best engines, but actually when they are running properly, they have a character of their own, and I was really enjoying it. However, very soon, issues started to pop up again. There was this sort of random misfire that got worse and worse. And I eventually traced it to the spark plugs getting coated in something I'd never seen before. It wasn't the usual sort of sooty black stuff from being too rich. It was like a black varnish with sort of like a sandy deposit on it, and it was impossible to clean. Once they were coated, you could do whatever you wanted, but the plugs wouldn't work anymore. That kind of deposit on the spark plugs is from burning too much oil. So too much oil was still getting into the cylinders. Now, I did all the previous work on my driveway and on that tiny single garage that I had, and so I didn't want to get into this car again, especially when the engine may have to come out in the same place. So I've waited roughly, I think it must be about 8 months, until I got this fantastic double garage before starting work again, and that's what's happening now. I spoke to Mick at QV, who strongly advised me to do a leak down test before doing anything else, just to see what the results would be. And I have looked far and wide to try and borrow a leak down tester, and I haven't been able to find one locally. So I think I've decided I'm going to leave that because there's no point buying a cheap one for sort of 30, 40 pounds because they're giving consistent results. And I can't really justify chucking a couple of £100 at one right now. So I think the plan is this. Both heads have been rebuilt, so it's extremely unlikely there's any issue with them, but I'm going to take the rear head off, just check it over, but also that will allow me to have a look at the bores and see what condition they're in, because that is something I didn't do before. Why is that, you ask quite rightly? Well, it's because when I first received this car, I did a compression test and I was absolutely over the moon with the results. It was brilliant, so I automatically dismissed the bottom end as having any issues. That was foolish, because when I took both heads off, I only gave the cylinders a very cursory glance and I didn't even turn the engine over. So it could well have been that there are some issues there. So I think I'm going to get started, and now what I've got to do is just shuffle things around in the garage, move the InfluEnzo to a more working position, and then we can get going on taking it apart. Well, everybody, something pretty unprecedented has happened, and that is that I'm going to listen to the advice of somebody who knows more than I do. That was Mick that just called me from QV, and we spoke again because I wanted to ask him about the cylinder liners, because I've heard these are Nicosil. They're not until the 4-valve cars, actually, so at least if they need to be bored out, it is possible without changing the liners. But anyway, as I spoke to him, he again emphasized to me, you really should try and do a leak down test, because you need to find out as much information as possible before you take that engine apart, because the problem may not be immediately obvious. And so at least a leak down will give you a better idea. So I am stopping this phase of just taking the rear bank off straight away, the rear head off straight away. I'm going to try and source a leak down tester somehow, and that is the next thing that we're going to do before I start tucking into the InfluEnzo and taking it apart. Good morning everybody. Well, I bit the bullet and I ended up buying a leak down tester. So I just couldn't find one anywhere that I could borrow, so I had to get one. And I didn't go for a super cheap one. I didn't buy a sort of 300-400 quid snap-on one either. I bought one, I think it retails 180. It's a Master something or other. I'll show you when we get to Anton's place. We are going to Anton's because I don't have a compressor which I need to use for the leak down. Once we're there, I'll explain how it all works and how the diagnostics work and what you can tell from doing the test. And we'll do the test and hopefully it will give us some useful information. So this is the new leak down tester that I got. It is a Master Pro. And the way it works is this. Essentially, you feed in compressed air into this end. It then passes it on into the cylinder through this. You put this into the plug hole. And then the leak down can measure how much of that compressed air is escaping through the cylinder, and it will give you an idea of the health of the engine. So anything up to 20% is just about acceptable. Anything over 20% indicates there's definitely a problem. The other way that this is very useful is that you can actually try and diagnose where the issue is, because when that compressed air is escaping, you can listen at various points on the engine to hear where it's coming from. So you can listen on the intake, for example, and that would tell you that it was a problem with one of the valves, or you can listen in the exhaust and that would be an exhaust valve, or you could have a listen to on the crankcase pressure. If it's coming through there, then it indicates, for example, that it's the rings. So I've never used one of these. Hopefully it won't be too tricky, but I'm just going to set it all up and then we'll see what results we get. Now the other thing is, when we're doing this test, we have to do it when each cylinder is on top, where each piston is on top dead center. So there is a timing mark for cylinder number 1 on the cam of this engine. And then I'm going to use a little rod just to find top dead center. And I'll also take off the rotor cap and make sure that it's actually in the firing position. Once I've done that with the first cylinder, I can then follow the firing order on the engine for the next one on each side. Really struggling to get the leak down tester to work and to work consistently, so I'm going to give it another go. But another thing I've just realized is, obviously by now the engine has cooled down, so I need to start it up again and just warm it up really before I try and do the leak down again. You may well be wondering what I am doing here back in my own garage, and the reason why I'm here is I've had a real disaster because I'm a complete idiot. I just jumped back in the car, I connected up all the leads, put the spark plugs back in, turned it over, it started up, ran for 2 or 3 seconds, then I heard a little pinging noise from the back and then it stopped. And then I remembered, in order to make sure that I was getting top dead center on all the cylinders, I'd taken the distributor cap off so that when I thought I had top dead center, I could also check the arm and make sure it was actually just about firing, basically, in the right position. And of course, what I think anyone with experience would do, or common sense, is you check it. So, you know, I'd have to put the cap back on and try and make sure the arm was pointing at the right connector. And then you would take it off and leave it off. Because then, if by chance you forgot to put it back on without screwing it back in, when you tried to start the car, it just wouldn't start. You'd go back, find it off, put it on properly, screw it in, and you would be fine. I left it on, so it was on enough for the car to start, run for 2 or 3 seconds, then the vibrations shook it off. It fell, hit the rotor arm, and both got badly damaged. So this is the rotor arm. This is the new rotor arm that I got when I bought the InfluEnzo. A whole arm is missing. The other upper arm, because it's a double distributor, is bent. The cap has a hole in it. I think it'll still work because it's only a hole in the plastic shrouding, but either way, it'll have to be changed. But it's obviously a disaster, but it could be even worse, because if I can't get the InfluEnzo running, I'm gonna have to use Anton's courtesy vehicle to get home. He's been dying for months to get me to use this thing, and I've resisted. 25 miles an hour top speed, I think, on a on the flat, and it's already 35 minutes in a normal car for me to get home. In that thing, I imagine it would be well over an hour. Anyway, I remembered when I first got the InfluEnzo, I had replaced these, and I was desperately hoping that I had kept the old ones. And in my little box of InfluEnzo bits, luckily, here they are. I know they're good enough for it to run. It probably won't run very well, but I think it should be enough, A, for me to be able to get the car back home, B, also enough to just warm it up and hopefully do those leak down tests again properly and once and for all. So I'm going to head back to Anton's now, and fingers crossed. Okay, so I've turned over the crank. I've used this to find top dead center, lined it up with a cam mark, which you can do for cylinder 1. So that should be top dead center. The next thing is, I've already calibrated a little bit the compressor, so it should be putting about 50 psi. So at this point, I then need to set the leakage to 0, so the set zone. And now we can connect it up, and I'm just going to move the camera and let's see what it reads. Okay, so that cylinder is actually reading 40%, which is not good. Okay, so air intake first, and Anton, yeah, press the accelerator down. That's weird. Yeah, now have a listen. It's number 1. Tell me when you're ready. Yeah? So just keep listening. It keeps going. Okay, everybody, really weirdly, so when we listen on the intake valve, you can hear, but it's not air, it sounds like fuel.
Yeah, it could be bubbling, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but what do you mean bubbling?
Well, the valve's closed.
Yeah.
The fuel's on top of the
Yeah.
valve.
Oh, you think it could be the bubbling going through the valve?
Yeah.
That's weird,
That's
though.
what it sounds like.
Yeah. Okay, so there's definitely air coming up through the crankcase vent, which would indicate rings, but there's that weird thing happening at the top there on the intake where there's this like fuel gurgling sound, which I'm not sure of, and the result on this obviously isn't good, so try the others and see what they show. Okay, cylinder 2. Thirty 36% leakage, which again, way above what it should be. So it's not on camera, but on cylinder 2, I also had a listen to where the leakage was coming from. And again, there's crankcase pressure, so it's going through the rings. And there is that weird sound coming from the intake. So let's see, nothing from the exhaust at all. Let's see what cylinder 3 does. So again, about 40%. Definitely still through the rings. You can really feel it on your ear if you use the pipe. You can feel the air pushing out. Dingo, can you have a quick listen to this intake? Tell me what you think. I don't know if it will do the same as the others because I have to go and open the throttle, but it's that cylinder there. I'll just go and open it. Tell me what you're hearing. I'll keep it open, so initially fuel will go down, but then it should stop. You can't hear anything initially, but then that was it. Okay, so it means on this one it isn't doing it. I'll find another one where it's doing that weird noise. You tell me what you think. Okay, cylinder 4. %. Everything's going wrong, so I've done another number 27 special, and that is that not only did I break the distributor and the cap and everything else, but the brake line was leaking slightly, and so I asked Anton about it. He said, oh yeah, just nip it up, and so I tried to nip it up, and I completely snapped the union and the connector, so had to go get another one, more time, more trouble, finish off this leak down. I'm really not confident in the leak down results from that tester. One interesting thing, I suppose, is on all cylinders I could hear some air coming up through the crankcase vent. But because I can't trust the percentages, I don't know if that was excessive or not. I managed to, the InfluEnzo is now running like absolute crap. I'm hoping that all it is just that obviously I had to put on the old rotor, and I'm hoping that that's what's causing it, because it's not running on all cylinders. So obviously I broke that, I broke Anton's airline. It's just been terrible. I shouldn't be allowed near cars, really. What an absolutely terrible couple of days. I have achieved very little, broken lots, and I'm hardly any further down the line in terms of sorting out what's going on with the InfluEnzo than I was before. So just at the end there, I didn't record too much of it, but I also decided while I was there, plugs were out, to at least do a compression test with Anton's tester, which I know works. And all cylinders showed between 170 and 175, which is great, apart from cylinder 6, which was showing 150. That's quite odd. It's not disastrous, but it's quite a big difference to the others, so something's going on there. However, unfortunately, that doesn't really help me at all, because the main issue I'm having, which is that it's burning oil, and that's mainly actually on the rear bank. That was on the front bank that it has that issue. So that doesn't help me with a diagnosis at all. We are where we are. The InfluEnzo is back, because now I don't have many other big projects at the moment, so I can start concentrating on this again. So the good news is there will be more InfluEnzo videos, in which undoubtedly I will carry on breaking stuff and not getting anywhere. So I hope you all enjoy that, because you're going to get more of it. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Really look forward to seeing you for the next one. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and please do watch some of the other stuff if you can, because that really helps me out as well. Or tell me what other kind of things you'd want to see. I'm always open to suggestions. Thank you so much. See you soon. And if you need to contact me, Instagram is the best way.